Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Dr. Sahara Omar. I am a licensed marriage and family therapist practicing here in the state of Texas. And today's video, I wanted to share with you guys what is attachment styles, how these attachment styles are formed, and also which attachment style are you yourself, and teach you guys how to come out of these attachment styles and learn how to be a little bit more secure, which is the healthiest form of our attachment styles. Okay, so before we dive in, attachment style was historically proposed by John Bowlby in 1950s/1960s, and he was a psychoanalyst that was just watching and studying infant parent-child relationships and how babies cling on to their parents, and he witnessed some of these styles, attachment styles, and he proposed the theory in the psychology world. And later down the line in 1980s and 90s, it got just developed a little bit more linguistically, and we kind of also noticed that how our attachment styles are formed early on has huge impact on the relationships that we form with adults as we are growing up and forming romantic relationships. Okay, so with that being said, there are four different types of attachment styles. I like to stick with these four. Sometimes people have like different names with them. I just personally just like to keep it a little bit more simple and easier to understand. Okay, so we have three that are dysfunctional, or we consider them not healthy. And then the middle, which is again what I mentioned to you guys before. In psychology, everything is on a spectrum in a way. We want to learn how to just be in the middle as much as possible, where we find that balance. So we call that secure attachment. Okay, so we'll start with first anxiously attached individuals. These attachment styles, like I said, they're formed early in our life, earlier in our developmental stages from 0 to 5-ish, right? Our parents kind of mimic our relationship with their relationship with us, essentially, right? So the bond that we have with them, it's how we're going to form those bonds with other people as we get older. But so we'll start with like it as an adult. So as an adult who's anxiously attached, typically crave closeness with people, and they have a lot of fear of abandonment. So there's this constant fear of, I'm going to be left behind, no one cares, right? So I'm worried that I'm going to be left. So that's fear of abandonment. And they might sometimes appear clingy, or some people experience them as being clingy, overly dependent, or they need this constant reassurance from their partner. If you are dating someone who's a little bit more anxious, they typically, or have this attachment style, typically they like to solve things right now. When there is an argument, there's this sense of like, you need to text me, you need to call me, I want to know. At the core, what's running is that fear, right? Like, I'm scared that something bad is going to happen. Typically, anxious people, or people that are anxiously attached, they grew up with, according to attachment theory, they grew up with an anxiously attached parent as well. So this is a parent from 0 to 5 that was operating from their own fear, of their own traumas as well. So they worried a lot. They projected that fear onto us, and we hung on to it, right? Like, we attached to it as well too. So this is a parent that was probably very much so like, I want to make sure nothing bad happens to you. They said no a lot. They held on to you very much, so you weren't allowed to explore or try on different ideas or different thoughts. There's this constant fear something bad is going to happen. And we as children, when we're kiddos, we're like a sponge, right? Like, so we observe that. And as we get older, we become very clingy, and I want to know the answer right now, and we need to solve things right now. There is no sense of trusting and just being okay, not knowing the answer, okay? The opposite of that is your avoidant attachment styles. Avoidantly attached adults typically show up they value their independence, right? Like, they like to just be alone and do their own thing. They struggle with emotional intimacy, like labeling their emotions and expressing their emotions and caring about other people's emotions as well. And they often suppress their feelings. So that's that lack of emotions again, like labeling what they're feeling internally. And they may seem sometimes very distant or unresponsive in relationships. So sometimes people experience them in romantic relationships as being like not caring, disconnected. The constant feeling, the feedback that I hear in couples therapy is, he doesn't care, or he never cares, or she never cares. Literally, that just kind of my red flag goes off in therapy, and I'm like, oh, maybe they are avoidant, right? And we talk through what their attachment styles as well. People who are avoidant, they grew up with a parent that did not care, right? Like literally from 0 to 5, this is a parent that was a little bit more neglectful in their parenting style. So the child were crying a lot perhaps, and no one changed their diaper as often, no one fed them as often. They almost like had to learn from a young age, from just seeking and not having a lot of answer. I can't trust anyone other than myself, so I want to make sure that I show up for me. So they also struggle sometimes trusting people and showing up in a vulnerable way as well. And then you have your third attachment style, which is disorganized. Disorganized people typically have a mix of avoidant and anxious tendencies in them. So they are a mix of a little bit of both, right? So they tend to at times seem to care too much, and if they feel like no one cares back, they will turn into an avoidant. But then if somebody shows them a little bit of interest, they show up very anxious. So they kind of oscillate just like the pendulum here between the two ends of the spectrum over and over again. Sometimes it comes from trauma. So most people who are disorganized, they had a lot of traumas that they grew up with. And it creates this push-pull dynamics with individuals who have this attachment style, right? So they are afraid of intimacy, but they also want to be alone. So there's a little bit of push-pull. Sometimes they care, they text and they call, and other times they act like you don't exist, essentially, right? So that's the disorganized attachment. Typically, people who are disorganized, outside of just having trauma, they also had a parent who at times really cared, and when they cared, they were so in their business and wanted to know like how they're doing, how they're feeling, and then when they don't care, they shut off completely and leave the child to be a little bit more in a confused state where yesterday you really cared about me and today I can't even get your attention, right? So that's how the disorganized attachment is formed. And then the next day they care a lot again, and the cycle continues, okay? The goal is to learn how to be secure. On average, research shows it takes a couple of years, about 4 years before you learn how to be secure. Secure people, they sit right in the middle, right? So there's a lot of trust in them. Typically, people who are secure, they feel comfortable with intimacy, so they know how to label their emotion. And they're very independent as well, too, in relationships, so they know how to meet their own needs. Unlike the anxious people who want the other person to meet their needs, they typically know how to meet their needs, and there's a little bit more trust in themselves and in life, and that they're going to be okay as well, too. And they do trust other people as well, too, by also leaning into setting their boundaries with people. I did make a video on boundaries and another video on how do you label your emotions. So I highly recommend going back on those and watch them as well. And also people who are secure, they have this positive self-esteem. So they look highly of themselves and they trust themselves in that way. And they're very stable and healthy in relationships. So if they need something, they'll voice it correctly. If they don't, when they ask their partner of that thing and the partner cannot meet it, they're not going to spiral and ask them like, you don't care about me, right? They don't go into that spiral. They know how to meet their own needs as well there too. So if you're anxious, you need to learn how to just trust and come back to showing up for yourself. If you're avoidant, you need to learn how to label your emotions and not run away from your emotions. And if you're disorganized, unfortunately, disorganized people have their work cut out a little bit more. You're learning both skills, right? Like you're learning how to meet your own needs and trust yourself, but also learning how to label your emotions and be vulnerable. If somebody did something that you don't like, it's okay to say, yesterday it really hurt when you didn't call. It really hurt me when you didn't text, right? That's vulnerability. You're putting yourself out there as well too. And over time, as you practice, eventually you will arrive at that secure place. So just be kind to yourself in that process as well. All right, I hope you guys liked the video. Feel free to hit that thumbs up. Please leave a comment and share this video also with other people. I am a little bit curious. What is your attachment style? And are you also working towards learning how to be secure? Thank you, everyone. I'll see you guys in the next video.